You say a word. Someone else understands it. You take this for granted. You have built your entire life around it. You have a job because of it, a family because of it, friends because of it. Humans speak about 7,000 different languages and use roughly 300 sign languages around the world today. For most of human history, we assumed we were the only species on Earth that had anything remotely like this. Linguists in the 20th century repeatedly drew a hard line. Animals communicated, sure, they had calls, signals, grunts, but language, real language, with words and grammar and meaning, was supposed to be ours alone. But for 99% of scientific history, this didn't exist. No translation, no recordings, no way to decode what a non-human was actually saying. No reason to believe they had anything to say. So, do animals really have language? Do they have words? Do they have names? Do they have grammar? The answer is more recent, more advanced, and more humbling than most people imagine. Let's start with the one that won a Nobel Prize. In 1973, the Austrian ethologist Karl von Frisch was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, shared with Konrad Lorenz and Nikolaus Tinbergen. He did not win it for curing a disease. He won it for translating the language of bees. For more than 4 decades, von Frisch had quietly studied honeybees returning to their hives. He noticed something that everyone had ignored. When a scout bee found a good food source, she would come back and dance. Specifically, she would walk in a figure-8 pattern on the surface of the comb, waggling her abdomen in the middle of each loop. Other bees in the hive watched her, then flew off in a specific direction and found the food. Von Frisch spent decades figuring out the code. The angle of the dance relative to vertical encoded the angle of the food relative to the sun. The speed of the abdominal waggling encoded the distance. A bee that waggled for 1 second was pointing at a flower about 1 kilometer away. A bee that waggled for 3 seconds meant 3 kilometers. It was geometric, mathematical, and absolutely precise. A creature the size of a fingernail was broadcasting GPS coordinates with its own body. The Nobel Committee decided that breaking that code was as important as any drug ever discovered. The honeybee, a creature with about 1 million neurons in its brain, had been giving driving directions for tens of millions of years, and we had not noticed. Then it got stranger. In the late 1980s, the American biologist Kon Slobodchikov at Northern Arizona University started recording the alarm calls of Gunnison's prairie dogs in the deserts of the southwestern United States. He spent 30 years on it. What he found, slowly, was almost too detailed to believe. Prairie dogs do not just shout danger when a predator appears. They describe it. They have one call for human, a different call for coyote, a different call for domestic dog, a different call for hawk. And inside each of those calls, there are even smaller variations. Slobodchikov and his students ran controlled experiments. They walked the same human past a prairie dog colony, dressed in different shirts. The alarm calls subtly changed depending on the color of the shirt. The call for a tall human in a blue shirt was measurably different from the call for a short human in a yellow shirt. The calls were not single units. They were composed of smaller acoustic elements, like phonemes that the prairie dogs combined into something that functioned like a noun with adjectives attached. A ground-dwelling rodent that weighs less than a kilogram was telling its family. In a single 1-second chirp, the species, the size, the speed, and the color of whatever was approaching the burrow. The prairie dog had nouns. The prairie dog had adjectives. The prairie dog had a description of you, on file, before you had taken 3 steps into its field. Now move to the ocean. In the 1990s, the marine biologist Vincent Yannick at the Sea Mammal Research Unit at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland began studying the bottlenose dolphins of Sarasota Bay, Florida. Dolphins produce a wide range of clicks and whistles, but Yannick focused on a specific kind that other researchers had noticed but had never explained. Every dolphin, by the time it is a few months old, develops one specific high-pitched whistle that is unique to that individual. It stays with them for the rest of their life. They use it constantly. It accounts for about 50% of all their vocalizations. Yannick called it a signature whistle. In 2013, his team published a paper in the journal Nas that proposed something extraordinary. When a dolphin wants to call to another specific dolphin across the bay, it imitates that other dolphin's signature whistle. It uses, in other words, the other animal's name. And the other dolphin recognizes its name, answers, and changes direction. This was the first confirmed case in scientific history of a non-human mammal calling another by name. Bottlenose dolphins swimming in salt water have been calling each other personally since long before there were humans on the planet to give names to anything. Somewhere off the coast of Florida tonight, two old dolphins who have known each other for 30 years are saying each other's names in the dark, and we have only just realized that this is what they are doing. On land, the great apes have their own dictionary. Catherine Hobader, a primatologist at the University of St. Andrews, has spent more than a decade in the Budongo forest of western Uganda filming wild chimpanzees. With her colleague Richard Byrne, she has built the first comprehensive catalog of chimpanzee gesture. In a paper published in Current Biology in 2014, Hobader and Byrne documented roughly 80 distinct gestures that wild chimpanzees use consistently across groups with stable meanings. Lifting an arm means give me, tapping the ground means come here, reaching with the palm up means share, touching the mouth means I want some. The chimpanzees do not have to be taught. They use the same gestures their parents used in the same situations with the same outcomes. In a follow-up study published in 2023, Hobader's team showed videos of these gestures to human volunteers who had never seen a chimpanzee in their lives. The humans correctly guessed the meaning more than 50% of the time. Many of these gestures are not just chimpanzee. They are part of a vocabulary we still share. The ape sitting in a Ugandan tree is using a language our hands still half remember. But the most extraordinary discovery in the field of animal language is barely a year old. In May of 2024, a team led by David Gruber, a biologist at the City University of New York and founder of an interdisciplinary project called SETI, the Cetacean Translation Initiative, published a paper in Nature Communication. Working with the doctoral researcher Pratyusha Sharma at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Computer Science, and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, the team used artificial intelligence to analyze tens of thousands of sperm whale vocalizations recorded by special biologgers attached to whales in the Caribbean. Sperm whales communicate using rhythmic sequences of clicks called coda. For 70 years, scientists had assumed there were maybe 20 distinct codas in their repertoire. A small vocabulary, useful but limited. Sharma's analysis revealed something that broke that assumption completely. Sperm whale codas have contextual structure. They have combinatorial structure. The same building blocks combine in different orders to mean different things. The same way human syllables combine into words and human words combine into sentences. Linguists call this property double articulation, and it is one of the foundational features of any human language. The team proposed what they called a sperm whale phonetic alphabet. A real alphabet. In a real animal. In real time. We are now, possibly within a decade, on the edge of having our first actual conversation with another species on this planet. A planet we have shared with them for 40 million years. So why does each of these languages look so different? Why do bees dance and dolphins whistle and whales click and chimpanzees gesture? The answer is the body. The bee lives in pitch dark inside the hive, so it cannot use light, but its wing muscles can vibrate against a comb that other bees can feel. The sperm whale lives in absolute darkness, a kilometer underwater, so it has to use, and clicks travel through water for kilometers without distortion. The dolphin needs to communicate in shallow, noisy bays, so it uses high-pitched whistles that cut through ambient noise. The chimpanzee lives in dense forests where sight matters more than sound, so it gestures. Language is not one thing. It is the body finding a way to send a thought across the gap between two minds. And every species that has ever needed to do that has invented its own version, shaped by what its body can do, where it lives, and what it needs to say. For 200,000 years, we walked across a planet humming with conversations we refused to hear. The bees were calculating. The dolphins were calling each other by name across the bay. The whales were having long, structured exchanges in the deep dark of the Caribbean. The chimpanzees were gesturing the same words our own hands still half know. The prairie dogs were describing us in detail every single time we walked past their burrows. The question was never whether animals had language. The question was always whether we were listening. For almost all of our history, the answer was no. We are finally, decades late, starting to learn how. And we are discovering, sentence by sentence, that the universe of voices we thought was silent was the loudest thing in the room. We did not invent language. We are simply the only species so far that ever assumed we did. The honeybee that gives coordinates to her sisters. The prairie dog that describes your shirt. The dolphin that says your name across the chimpanzee that gestures "come here" in a language that translates straight to ours. The whale that, somewhere in the dark of the deep ocean tonight, is putting together a sentence we have not yet learned to hear. They were all talking the whole time.